Hello everybody, and it's Mr. Burns in the Weather Studio doing your 7th spring update, I think this is now. And in this update we're getting very close to the end of the spring updates. Just to let everyone know, in case you haven't watched the previous updates, the reason we're doing these updates on the Mr. Burns and Weather Studio channel is because Gav is taking a break. He's got a lot on at the moment and he's not doing any long range, so that's why we're doing the spring updates in the same format as Gav does, where we look at previous years at similar weather patterns and see what the springs were like in those years and come up with like an analogues based forecast. Just thought I'd kick off the mean central England temperatures. So it's turning into a very warm March. It's been very nice today and yesterday. I was out in my shorts for the first time since about October, maybe even September yesterday. And that's reflected in the CET, so it's currently at 7.2, which is 2 degrees above average. Bear in mind that's a 1960 to 1990 average, but even so, it is a very mild March, and that's probably going to go up even more next week once as we're in for some more even warmer weather. It's set to get even warmer later on this week. So in this update, in this 7th spring update, we're going to look at the winter CET. So we had a central England temperature of 5.9 for winter 2022. Yeah, so we're going to look at winters with a central England temperature range between 5.6 and 6.2, which puts 5.9 right in the middle of that range. And we've got a range of years, so we've got 1949, 1990, 1995, 1998, 2008, 2014, 2019, and 2020. So yeah, let's get on with it. You'll notice that the winters with this temperature range get more frequent as we get closer to present day, because it is quite a very mild range between 5.6 and 6.2. So we start off with the spring of 1949. So all of these years had winter CETs between 5.6 and 6.2, which is mild, but not exceptionally so. It's not like in the mid to upper sixes. We're not looking at the very mildest winters, but we are looking at very mild winters and the springs that followed those mild winters. So the spring of 1949 looks like this, with high pressure over and just to the west of the UK, deep low pressure to the north, probably polar jet stream left over from the winter, polar vortex left over from the winter, wind in from the west, so a very westerly spring, and I would have thought quite mild as well, so quite mild and relatively dry, away from the far north of the country where we are closer to the low pressure. So quite a westerly and a high pressure dominated spring to start us off. It looks quite a present spring for 1949. This is the spring of 1990, with high pressure centred pretty much over the top of the country, low pressure pushed off to the north, jet stream off to the north as well. So it looks again a mild and dry spring in 1990, and I think it ended up being a hot summer in 1990 as well. I'm not sure, I think it was. Next up is 1995, and this definitely had a really hot summer, an exceptionally dry summer as well. It was even drier than the summer of 1976, but the hose pipe, we didn't have the drought conditions in 1976 because it was wetter before in 1995, whereas in 1976 it like barely rained for like 2 years before that drought summer. Off on a bit of a tangent there, but basically for this spring we have low pressure to the north and east of the country, high pressure to the south and west, winds in from like a northwesterly direction, so probably quite a cool and unsettled spring in the spring of 1995, but that hot summer of 1995 more than made up for that, of course. Next up we have the spring of 1998 with high pressure just out to the west of the country and winds in from northerly direction, so that's quite a I would have thought that's quite a cold spring in 1998, but probably relatively dry. I think that's in February 1998 was exceptionally warm, with temperatures into the mid to upper teens Celsius at times. But then in April 1998, we had I think we had snow, so a big flip around for that spring. We had basically had spring in February and winter in April in that year. Next up, we've got 2008. This one has a lot of northern blocking, high pressure over Greenland and Iceland, a trough of low pressure over the top of the country. Doesn't tell you the whole story though, because it was quite cold around Easter 2008. So remember, we had snow. It was right at the end of March. And then it was quite a chilly April in 2008, and then it went warm, dry and sunny in May of 2008, and then quite a poor summer followed in 2008, especially in August 2008, which I think was one of the dullest on record, I believe. Next up, we've got spring of 2014 with high pressure over and just to the east of the country, low pressure to the west. Winds probably pulling up from like a southerly direction a lot of the time, probably coming up from the continent a lot of the time, so probably quite a mild and dry spring in 2014, quite a pleasant spring in 2014. Next up is 2019. We've got low pressure in the middle of the Atlantic, high pressure around Greenland, and high pressure around the UK as well. Generally quite a high pressure dominated spring. It was mild and wet in March 2019. It was warm and dry in April 2019, and May 2019 was cool but also dry. So a changeable spring with different weather conditions, with a lot of intra-month variation, but overall it was on the warmer and drier than average side. Quite a pleasant spring in 2019. Also had a very warm February, of course, in 2019 as well. I'm sure you'll all remember that. Finally, we have the spring of 2020. So after the polar vortex of doom winter, that exceptionally mild but exceptionally wet winter, we've got high pressure. We have a very warm and dry spring. High pressure anchored over the UK. Low pressure, that's the leftover of the polar vortex. Jet stream pushed off to the north. Polar vortex backed off into northeastern Europe and western Russia. We're under the big ridge of high pressure. It's warm, dry and sunny spring pretty much from beginning to end, with only like a few days of cooler and wetter weather, but overall it's a very warm, dry and sunny spring. I think we have the sunniest April on record, I think, and maybe the sunniest May on record as well. I think it's probably the one of, if not the sunniest springs on record. It's also the spring we go into lockdown, which is kind of a bad thing, because a lot of people couldn't get outdoors, but then again a lot of people could get outdoors because instead of having to go to work or school or college, they could relax in the garden, or go for walks in the park or that kind of thing. So yeah, it was kind of a nice time for me. Had a break from college and just spent time sunbathing in the garden and going for local walks and things. So yeah, very pleasant spring, that one, and helped to get us through that first lockdown. Putting it all together then, so here's all the years, so 1949, 1990, 1995, 1998, 2008, 2014, 2019 and 2020. Here's how it looks, and overall it's a high pressure dominated signal with high pressure over the UK, low pressure to the north, jet stream pushed off to the north, so overall it's a warm and dry signal for these springs, and that's been the overall theme when we've done these analogues, for a warm and dry spring. And it's certainly turned out to be a warm and dry spring so far. It has been a bit unsettled like earlier on in March, but it has settled down now. March is often cold and wet to start off with, and warm, dry and sunny to end. And then the first week of April often goes quite cold for a while before warming up as you get later on into April. That's tended to be the theme in recent years. And yes, I think there does seem to be a trend between mild winters and warm, dry springs. We can see that. Also, I was reading a weather forum last night, and yeah, there does seem to be a link between like mild wet Februaries and warm dry springs as well. Oh, we've got 2019 and 1998, which were very mild Februaries, but also very dry Februaries. So, or fairly dry Februaries. I would have been able to settle weather at some point, but I don't really remember it. Um, but um, but yeah, I think very generally mild Februaries tend to follow. When you have a mild February, you tend to have a mild spring, and I think that came up in our analogues as well. So as for most of these updates, the uh, the majority of these updates have favoured a warm and dry spring. So I think that's probably what we're going to have to go for in our forecast, which will be released very soon. It's certainly like 19 days into meteorological spring now, and only a couple of days until the start of astronomical spring. So yeah, and the weather's definitely spring now, spring-like now, almost summer-like, you could say. So yeah, I definitely want to get this update done. So I think we might. We'll probably do another update looking at precipitation, winter precipitation data. Then we might do another update looking at the seasonal models, and then after that, I want to release the forecast. Don't want to release any spoilers, but at this stage, it's looking like we're probably going to forecast a warm and dry spring. The only caveat to that is that it's we have had not a sudden stratospheric warming, but quite a pronounced stratospheric warming, which could translate to northern blocking and colder weather a few weeks down the line. So I'll have to keep an eye on that. So I'll probably predict overall warm and dry spring, but with probably like a colder week or two in April with some northerly winds. We'll have to see about that. But overall, I think it's going to be a warm and dry spring. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this 7th spring update. Please give it a like if you enjoyed. Comments down below if there's anything you think I could improve on, or maybe you just really enjoyed the updates. And yeah, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos. Alright guys, that's all for now, and thank you very much for watching. Bye.